Hello, boys and girls. Got another video for you fine folks on the internet today. Another installment in the Matthew Buckley Talks music series. Looking today at another obscure 1960s psychedelic rock album. One that I think should be a bit more of a commonly regarded classic, but in any case, today's album is We Are Paintermen by The Creation. Originally released in mid-1967 on Hit-Ton Schallplatten Records in Germany, concurrently issued on Sonnet Records in Denmark, and it would be well over a decade before it would see another issue. In 1982, it was finally repressed by Line and Outline Records on white vinyl for German markets. And then again the next year it was reissued on white vinyl by Impact Records for German markets. And once more the following year in 1984 on black vinyl by Outline Records in the German markets. And then it would be well over another decade before it would get a subsequent issue, seeing its first CD remaster in 1999, put out by Repertoire Records. And then almost 20 years later it would get another reissue as a CD, a paper sleeve CD Japanese import by Old Days Records, issued concurrently with a pink vinyl reissue of the album by Numero Group. And last year in 2020, the album was reissued as a stereo press by Edsel Records for UK markets. And most recently in 2021, this past year, it was issued collaboratively by Demon Records and Edsel Records as a limited edition 140-gram clear vinyl reissue. So it's got quite an extensive re-release history, especially more recently, as opposed to closer to its initial issue, which is interesting to me. But a little background for anyone who might not be familiar with The Creation, which wouldn't necessarily surprise me since they're not exactly a household name. They formed in Chestnut, Hertfordshire, England in 1966, evolving from the pop and beat group The Mark IV, which consisted of vocalist Kenny Pickett, guitarists Eddie Phillips and Mick Thompson, bass player John Dalton, and drummer Jack Jones. Between 1963 and 1966, the group recorded and released 4 singles for Mercury, Decca, and Fontana Records. And after a couple changes in lineup and in management, the group rechristened themselves The Creation and began to adopt a more mod-styled hard rock and art pop sound. And their live shows began to garner quite a reputation as well, as they would perform their hit single Paintermen with a violin bow used on the guitar. And during performances, lead vocalist Kenny Pickett would spray paint canvas that would often be lit ablaze on stage in the middle of performances. So they definitely had quite a reputation for their act that they had going on. And in this time, the lineup shifts continued. They brought on a new bass player, Kim Gardner, as the Bob Garner, very similarly named fellow, who had joined around the time of their name change, began to take more of the lead vocal duties, sort of edging Kenny Pickett out of the group. And as I said earlier, in mid-1967, the group issued their debut full-length album, We Are Paintermen, and it was relatively well received. It attained some moderate success in various European markets, but towards the end of the year, guitarist Eddie Phillips flat out quit the band, and in spite of finding a replacement guitarist, Bob Garner would also quit the group in early February 1968, and the band subsequently dissolved. Interestingly enough, drummer Jack Jones assembled a new lineup for the group, bringing Kenny Pickett back on board as vocalist, and even bringing Kim Gardner in on bass guitar, along with, perhaps most surprisingly to me, guitarist Ronnie Wood, who would later find much greater fame with the Jeff Beck Group and even later than that, the Rolling Stones. Unfortunately, this iteration of the band would be short-lived, unraveling by the end of summer 1968. And after going their separate ways for some time, Eddie Phillips, Kenny Pickett, and John Dalton, along with Mick Avery, reformed the band in mid-1980s to tour and record together. And their initial 1987 sessions were ultimately aborted, but in 1994, the group, sans Dalton, recorded and released the album Power Surge, which was their first in almost 30 years. In 1997, Pickett passed away, and after a few more years of touring, Bob Garner and Jack Jones both retired. Garner also passing away in 2016. And to this day, Eddie Phillips still tours under the name of the Creation, all these decades later, the only original member. So, on to the album itself. Side A opens with Cool Jerk, a cover of the 1966 smash hit song written by Donald Storball and originally performed by American rhythm and blues and soul trio The Capitals. This reading is very true to the spirit of the original, while still infusing some of the band's garagey, mod, and British beat sensibilities. You could arguably say it's a bit of filler, but it's a fun track all the same, especially with the instrumental call and response sections. You know, I want to hear the drummer playing all by itself. Give me a little bit of bass. Play it with your fingers. Give me some guitar. There you are. It's fun stuff. It's a fun opening cut. And the next track, Making Time, was written by lead vocalist Kenny Pickett and lead guitarist Eddie Phillips. The song was released as the A-side of the band's debut single in June of 1966. And it starts with heavily distorted guitar and a really killer riff. To me, this is the definition of a psychedelic rock nugget. And throughout the song, prominently noticeable during the solo, Phillips plays his guitar with a violin bow on the recording, a technique later made famous by Jimmy Page with the Yardbirds and later Led Zeppelin, if you're familiar with that group. The song is really, it's an overstimulating almost explosion of searing and sizzling psychedelic fuzz. It's great. Again, like with that violin bow, the guitar has such an aggressive tone, and this was pioneering that technique well before Jimmy Page ever, at least before I'm aware of Jimmy Page taking a violin bow to his sixth string. And the next track, Through My Eyes, was written by Eddie Phillips and bass guitarist turned vocalist Bob Garner, released as the B-side of the band's fifth single in October of 1967. Drenched in fuzz and delay, this, once again, is a quintessential piece of British psychedelia, with all sorts of lyrics about states of consciousness and altered perceptions. The song is given such a sluggish and drugged delivery between that and the dreamy backing vocals, in my eyes. It's really quite a hypnotic track. I like it a lot. Then the next track is a cover of Bob Dylan's anthemic smash hit single Like a Rolling Stone, albeit severely abridged in this rendition, clocking in at just over 3 minutes, which is less than half of Dylan's original, which stretches across almost 6.5 minutes. But in any case, this is a solid interpretation. It does lose some measure of the acerbic bite of Dylan's original, with his nasally delivery. But this rendition, it just, for who they are, it feels a bit more regal and classy. Perhaps mostly because the group is British. It sort of comes through somehow. It's still mod and rockin'. It's a good cover. And the next track, Can I Join Your Band, was written by lead guitarist Eddie Phillips and manages to straddle the line of being an original and ambitious composition, while also being quirky, fun, and even outright goofy. The lyrics tell of a fellow who dreams of playing in a rock and roll band and describes himself as a hippie guy, always stoned and 8 miles high. I love it. It's a real fun song, kind of irreverent, but still self-aware. And there's a very cool piano and guitar interlude about halfway through. As the guitars bang away into the chorus and the verses, it's you can't help but find a smile on your face. It's good stuff. The following track, Tom Tom, was written by bassist and vocalist Bob Garner and guitarist Eddie Phillips, and released as the B-side of the group's 6th single in February 1968. It's a fast-paced rock and roll romp. The guitars are fuzzy, the solo practically sizzles, honestly. That's the highlight of the track to me. And the drums bang with a carefree energy. As much as this track might also, like the opener of Side A, feel a little bit like filler, it's bursting with too much zeal, too much youthful zeal to be disregarded. End Side A. Side B opens with Try and Stop Me, written by vocalist Kenny Pickett and guitarist Eddie Phillips once again. A fast-paced rocker, this song was issued as the B-side of the band's first single in June 1966. The lead guitar lines are hooks in and of themselves. They just grab you and drag you right into the melody. And the lyrics are dynamite. To me, it's the same kind of spirit you find you find in a song like Jimi Hendrix's Stone Free. It's just boundless youthful energy that can't be tamed. It's a great sentiment. And speaking of sentiment, the next track, If I Stay Too Long, was written by bassist and vocalist Bob Garner and guitarist Eddie Phillips, issued as the A-side of the band's 4th single in June of 1967. And this is definitely one of the highlights of the album for me. It's a bit of a slower and more thoughtful song than a lot of the other cuts. There's a healthy dose of swirling psychedelic organ, par of the course for mid-60s psych rock. And the group vocals in the chorus just really sweep me away. This is another very dreamy song with traces of melancholia, but there's a definite, it's got a sense of concrete resolution, both musically, lyrically, and thematically. 5 stars in my opinion. This is definitely like the song of the album for me, a little bit of a centerpiece. And the following track, Biff Bang Pow, was written by vocalist Kenny Pickett and guitarist Eddie Phillips, issued as the B-side of the group's 2nd single in October of 1966. And unlike the previous track, it's another fast-tempo garage rock rave-up, the band banging out the tune in barely a couple minutes. This is, again, a picture of mid-60s British proto-punk, if I've ever seen one. And, someone hoping for more songs like the predecessor may think of this as filler, but as I've already said of other songs, it's high-energy, fun-filled filler at worst. It's good stuff. I like this song. And the next track, Nightmares, was also written by Pickett and Phillips, and was first issued as the B-side of the group's 4th single in June of 1967. Another up-tempo, garagey, psychedelic rock song. The vocals, while not necessarily hypnotic or dreamy, are still wild and psychedelic. It's another example of classic psychedelic lyrics that touch on altered perceptions, illusory phenomena, and states of consciousness. And in my opinion, this is one of the most original songs on the album. It's a lot of their other songs I can sort of imagine other groups performing. Biff Bang Pow or Try and Stop Me, I could see The Who doing. Making Time or the Paintermen, I could see, the late era Yardbirds doing. I could even see, yeah, Tom Tom or friggin' Can I Join Your Band? There's a few mid-late 60s mod hard rock groups that I could see, hard rock pop groups that I could see doing some of these songs. But a song like Nightmares in particular, or a song like Through My Eyes is another good example. But this song in particular just really seems to be a bit more tailored to this particular group of musicians and their unique strengths. And that definitely can be said about other songs on the album to an extent. But I really get this feeling with this track more so than the others. It definitely is not a song that I think the Byrds could have done, or it's very much a creation song, if that makes sense. And the next track is a cover of the classic song Hey Joe, speaking of songs that other people could do, originally written by Billy Roberts and popularized by Jimi Hendrix in 1966. So many artists have covered this song in various styles. Interestingly enough, in the liner notes to this album, the song is credited as being a traditional song arranged by guitarist Eddie Phillips, which inspired me to do a little bit of research, and I had never realized there's actually quite a bit of interesting history about the origins of the authorship of Hey Joe. So, perhaps that's an idea for another video or another video series all its own, now that I think about it, on songs and their history. But anyway, this interpretation of Hey Joe is a bit on the slower side. Like the Byrds and the Leaves, their versions are a little bit more faster paced than Jimmy's, but this one might even be a little bit more slow than Jimmy's. It's really good though, and it feels like, honestly, the most informal of all the songs on the record. There's even a sort of spoken word rap at the end as the band winds down. It's good stuff. It won't get you out of your seat and dancing, but it'll get you bobbing your head, tapping your toes. And the following track, Paintermen, was written by vocalist Kenny Pickett and guitarist Eddie Phillips, that songwriting team we've come to know and love over this video, and released as the A-side of the group's second single in October of 1966. It actually peaked at number 36 on the United Kingdom singles chart and number 8 in the West German singles charts, making it their only top 40 UK hit and their highest charting single in any market worldwide. The concept of the song literally came from the band's stage act, as I said earlier, in which Kenny Pickett would paint canvas on stage during performances, often setting the art ablaze. And the lyrics, I do enjoy the lyrics. They tell of a college student struggling to be an artist in various mediums against a culture of increasingly commercial art, concluding that classic art has had its day. And much like Making Time from side A, this song features prominent use of electric guitar by Eddie Phillips, played with a violin bow, giving a distinctly aggressive guitar sound throughout the track, and side B. So, final thoughts. This album rocks. Considering how innovative and progressive they were, while managing to sound as marketable as a lot of their more successful peers, I'm consistently surprised that I don't see the creation more regularly spoken of in reverent terms. They've got the garage rock bite and mod sensibilities of The Who, the songwriting partnership bands like the Beatles and the Beach Boys cultivated to great success, and the experimental and psychedelic tendencies bands like the Moody Blues and even the Rolling Stones were exploiting. And then, of course, when you factor in the sort of bowed violin sounds that really put them on a level with bands like the Yardbirds and early Led Zeppelin, they definitely played with a lot of ingredients, if you will, that should have been a recipe for success, or greater success anyways. And it's a shame that this was, for so long, the group's only album. And that being said, it almost feels more like a compilation album than a proper studio album, as 9 of the 12 songs were recorded and released as unrelated singles over a 20-plus month period. So it definitely doesn't necessarily have an overall flowing concept, but there is a cohesive sound and feel throughout, even when the mood or tempo shifts drastically from one track to the next. So let me get a closer look for you guys at the art here. It's a very nice portrait of the band. On the A side, and the back here is pretty simple. It's just got the title and track sequence and some other albums on the label. Nothing too fancy to write home about. And then the record itself, just a black vinyl with the standard label. Nothing too fancy. But yes, indeed, this is a stellar album. Anyone who, enjoys classic 60s rock, be it psych rock, mod rock, or whatever the hell you want to call it, this is something you should check out. You like The Who? Check this out. You like the Yardbirds? Check this out. It's really good stuff. These guys are criminally underrated, and I would certainly not hesitate to rate this album at least 7. I'll just go straight 7 out of 10. It's a strong 7 for sure. So let me know in the comments below. Are you familiar with The Creation? Have you heard the We Are Paintermen album? Are you familiar with any of their latter-day works post-Reformation in the 80s and 90s? I'd love to hear it. Let's get a discussion flowing in the comments. I appreciate any and all viewership, and stay tuned because there will be more coming at you. This has been Matthew Buckley Talks Music with The Creation. We Are Paintermen. Music is the best.